Welcome to WriteHiveCon 2026 and thank you for tuning in to practical tips to avoid ableism in your writing. I'm Nicoletta, my pronouns are she, they. I write in the contemporary YA space and my poetry appears in the anthology He, She, They, Us from Macmillan. Over the next couple minutes, I'll talk you through what ableism is, the ways it shows up in media, ableist language, and as the title of this presentation suggests, give you practical tips to writing and creating disabled characters that don't rely on harmful stereotypes to make your stories better and more inclusive. Ableism describes discrimination against disabled people. Ableism positions disability as something that decreases a person's inherent worth, takes away their humanity, and makes them inferior. It's not surprising then that people see the word disability or disabled as pejoratives. They startle and make shushing noises around it, and instead resort to euphemisms like differently abled and handicapable. It's othering. It keeps disabled people at a distance from non-disabled people. Notice how I said non-disabled rather than normal. The opposite of disabled is abled or non-disabled. The opposite of neurodivergent, for example, is neurotypical. And the opposite of autistic is allistic. It's normal to be disabled and to become disabled. Disabled people exist across nations, genders, religions, sexualities, but strangely, not across stories. Even though, according to the World Health Organization, 1 in 6 people is disabled. If your work excludes them, disabled readers in particular will wonder what happened to them. What has been done to them? They will draw their own conclusions about the world you've created. They will assume you've disappeared disabled people, either through eugenics or by warehousing them in special facilities. Not including them in your writing is as much a choice and says as much as including them. It won't go unnoticed. Most disabilities aren't congenital, they're acquired throughout life. It's one of the few marginalized communities you can join at any point in time. Some of you may already have joined and not realized it because you presume a disabled person is someone who uses a wheelchair and whose life is one big sinkhole of suffering. Society has normalized needing and wearing glasses. It's no big deal, which is good, we want that. But when someone's physical disability means they require a cane or a walker, people go, oh no! They might even question whether the person simply isn't trying hard enough to walk without one. Both objects, glasses and cane or walker, are accommodations that make the person's life easier. But signifiers of disability, meaning anything that makes a person's disability legible to the rest of the world, will often result in others treating disabled folks with disapproval, contempt, as less than. Any person who uses a wheelchair will tell you, at least once while they were out and about with someone, a stranger came up to them and instead of speaking to them directly, spoke to their companion about them, as if they weren't there. This is ableism in action. It's dehumanizing and it's intrusive in a myriad of ways, structurally, medically, socially, sometimes subtle, sometimes overt, sometimes unintentional. All of us grow up ingesting ableist beliefs, language, and stereotypes. When all the media you consume portrays people a certain way, you think that's reality. As a native German, let me give you an unrelated example. Is German really a harsh language? Or has the only context in which you've heard it spoken been World War II speeches and impersonations thereof? Allow me to invoke Emily Dickinson, translated by Walter A. Aue. Die Hoffnung ist das Federding, das in der Seel sich birgt und Weisen ohne Worte singt und niemals müde wird. That's hope is the thing with feathers in German. Not quite as harsh as you've been led to believe, right? In large part because of how society is set up. Lots of people believe they don't actually know disabled people personally, often because they don't think of their old disabled relatives as disabled, though they are, or because the disabled person in their lives doesn't consider themselves disabled, due to internalized ableism, for example. The majority of information they get about disability is from media, from books, from TV, from news stories, most of which still perpetuate awful stereotypes because they don't center disabled people. They cater to a non-disabled audience. The thing is, ableist language, the associated assumptions and behavior is harmful even when it isn't directed at a disabled person. If you describe your non-disabled coworker as turning a blind eye, what does that mean? It means you're equating blindness with ignorance. Let me give you some more examples with alternatives I encourage you to apply to your writing and obviously while you're out and about in the world. Instead of saying blind spot, being blind to something, or turning a blind eye, you can describe someone as being ignorant or not knowledgeable. Instead of calling someone wheelchair bound, you can say he's a wheelchair user or she uses a wheelchair. Instead of saying, I'm so ADHD, you can say, I'm unfocused, distracted, overwhelmed, forgetful. Instead of saying, I'm so OCD, you're particular, organized, maybe superstitious. Instead of saying falling on deaf ears, you can describe that someone didn't hear what was said or that they're willfully ignorant and deliberately ignoring what was said. Instead of saying hearing impaired, you can say deaf or hard of hearing. Instead of saying, they suffer from autism, you can say they have autism, they are autistic. Instead of lame, you can say boring, uninteresting, pathetic, unoriginal. Instead of crazy, nuts, psycho, insane, mad, maniac, lunatic, you can say wild, unpredictable, strange, outrageous, extreme, intense, or reckless. Instead of stupid, idiotic, dumb, you can once again say ignorant or unwise, silly, nonsensical. Remove the R slur from your vocabulary. I cannot believe we still have to talk about this. This is not a word that is being reclaimed. This has not shifted in its connotation. This is derogatory, pure and simple. It's extremely ableist. There is no reason to use it. There'll come a point when a simple swap won't do the trick. Because ableism is pervasive in its devaluation of people with disabilities, mental health disorders, and chronic illnesses. The quickest, most common way to insult someone is to insult their intelligence or the state of their mental health by calling them a moron, an idiot, or a madman. This is ableism action once again. Luckily, you've paid very close attention to what I've been saying, so when you come across a moment in your own writing practice where your instinct is to use those words but you feel icky about it, congratulations! Your awareness of ableism is preventing you from causing harm. But first comes resistance. Is one character calling another moron really that bad? It's just realistic, right? And you want your fiction to be realistic. And this character wouldn't care about ableism anyway. And another pejorative would be authentic coming from him. Never mind during that time period. Hold up. You're telling me you're a writer, but you can't find a single other way to express the same sentiment? I don't believe you. I believe you think you'd be wasting your time figuring this out. You want to get this draft, this revision, this project done already. And I get it. We've all been there, just wanting to get it done. I encourage you to think about it this way. You will be growing as a writer if you challenge yourself to contribute to a less ableist literary landscape. One that's welcoming, inclusive, and also more fun to read. Ableism produces lazy, uninspired writing. It signals you lack imagination and empathy and don't put much effort into the characters you create. Doing better doesn't require a harmonious cast of pure, kind-hearted, cotton candy souls. If you want them to react verbally in moments of fury or frustration or whatever prompts the insult, it simply requires those characters to berate one another's behavior instead of their body or brain. You can use the aforementioned lists of alternatives as a jumping off point to categorize the specific behavior or behavior pattern. You can modify their reaction from "you idiot" to "you always do this" or "this is why I can't trust you." You're the writer, you figure it out. Improving your craft will lead to a richer, more engaging text. And ultimately, isn't that the goal? The biggest thing that comes up in fiction again and again is disabled characters as teaching tools on a dichotomous scale, either good or bad. Good, naive, and harmless, or tragic, evil, and dangerous. Ableist depictions love tying disability to morality. When the disabled person functions as a symbol for goodness, they possess a childlike innocence. Their presumed incompetence and naivete sustains a patronizing view of disabled people, which often goes hand in hand with the assumption that disabled people, no matter their age or sexual orientation, are inherently aromantic, asexual, and undesirable by default. These characters install patience and other virtues in the protagonist, a dynamic you often see in middle-grade sibling relationships where one child is disabled but the other is not. When the narrative centers an adult, the disabled person gives them the chance to redeem themselves for previous bad behavior by becoming their warden. These adults show they've grown by treating the disabled person with kindness, in spite of what a burden they are considered to be, and taking their responsibility seriously. The disabled person's perceived lack is always front and center. It's all there is to them. They're a victim of their circumstance, which always robs them of their personality and agency. They aren't autistic, they suffer from autism. They don't use a wheelchair, they're shackled to it. A wheelchair signifies disaster, the worst case imaginable, rather than a fantastic way for people with limited mobility or chronic issues to be out and about, whether out of the house or simply out of bed. People who haven't confronted their ableist views can't fathom that a wheelchair is a sign of freedom. Disabled characters must inspire the protagonist to create a life that contrasts their own. Because a disabled person who lives a full life? Unrealistic. Who wants to read about that? That's not inspiring. They haven't even tried to compete in the Paralympics. They're not special. They're just people? Nah, that can't be. There's got to be something tragic about them, and therefore the non-disabled protagonist will feel compelled to carpel the heck out of every DM and feel oh so grateful for what they have. As a result, dating a disabled character makes their partner virtuous, a hero for putting up with them. A non-disabled guy asks the disabled girl to prom? Aw, that's noble. It makes him the center of attention. His behavior is seen as charity. He's applauded for it. This only works through the ableist lens that views disabled people as inferior. The trope is particularly pervasive in a caregiver-centric story that focuses on the sacrifice of the family members, guardians, or partners of a disabled individual. It portrays disability as tragic and disabled people as burdens, rather than directing their misgivings at the systems that withhold adequate support. In many of those stories, disabled people activate benevolence in everyone around them. If they can't be cured, which obviously ableism believes is the ultimate goal, they need to be good for something. Disability can't just exist as a part of life. A happy end, requires disability to stop, either through cure or death. You can see how that's upsetting, right? The idea of disability pride still baffles a lot of people. They can't fathom disabled joy, the richness and beauty of the disabled community. Some writers attempt to balance or cancel out disability in their characters by having them gain a superpower or turn superhuman. A character's visual disability enhances their hearing. Another is depicted as wise beyond measure and imparts wisdom to the hero who seeks their guidance. Magic is what makes up for their disability. Exceptionalism gives them back their worth. In the most extreme versions of superpowers acting as balance for disability, writers try to get rid of the character's disability altogether. Not only does the blind character have superhuman hearing, they can also intuit where everything, people, furniture, items, doors, moving cars, is at all times. They are exceptional. Their disability isn't stopping them. Actually, that disability isn't important at all. It doesn't affect their life. They don't require resources. It's the idea of overcoming disability. If a disabled person only tries hard enough, they can do whatever they set their mind to. And that's when and why they deserve respect. How inspirational of them. Let's forget about their disability, okay? Until it's useful for the plot. An unnamed, unimportant wheelchair user needs rescuing, allowing the protagonist to shine. After a heated discussion, a character with Tourette's appears and their verbal tics break the tension. They serve as narrative plot devices, as entertainment. How pleasant! They're not pestering anyone for accommodations, neither annoying or inconveniencing other characters with their disability. The non-disabled audience can accept them because they aren't that disabled, are they? They're not a problem. Look, they work. In a capitalist society which measures a person's worth by their ability to perform labor, the only acceptable disabled person is one who doesn't strain the system in any shape or form. They work and go home where they do whatever they need to be able to go to work again the next day. Think of the most prevalent representation of autism spectrum disorder. Straight white boys and men with not just an aptitude for science but savant-level skills. They speak in monotone, always. It makes for good TV. All too often, their ineptitude in social situations is played for laughs, where their lack of empathy and oh-so-strange demeanor is tolerated because they're useful for the plot. They can solve any problem. Their brains are like computers. Ableism can't help but to other and dehumanize autistic people. They're not like us, they're robots. They think logically, as though incapable of opinions that aren't fact-based, because they are incapable of emotions, and so emotions cannot influence their thoughts. It should come as no surprise to you that autistic people are in fact emotional beings and just as prone to harboring harmful beliefs and opinions across issues such as racism, misogyny, transphobia, and even eugenics. In a world that praises them for not being like those autistics with the support needs, the internalized ableism may result in them seeing themselves as superior. Similar to how some gay people with internalized homophobia will say, yes, I'm gay, but not that kind of gay, meaning flamboyant, outspoken, non-conforming to cis-hetero norms. Some autistic people don't consider themselves disabled at all, sometimes because they have low to no support needs, other times because they don't want to be associated with a community due to the stigmas and profound barriers an affiliation carries. Yet media still desexualizes them, not because they identify as asexual or aromantic, but by default. If they're on a dating show, they behavior is, once again, played for laughs. The music that plays fits a kid's TV show. The voiceover resembles a nature documentary. Such is the circus of autism representation. If a disabled character dares to demand accommodations, which, mind you, they have a literal right to, or try to claim their humanity, it once again proves that disability is bad. They become a symbol for evil. Welcome to the other side of the good-evil binary. There is no in-between where ableism is concerned. Ableism insists a disabled life is a tortured, unworthy one, and so disability is a quick way to signal villainous. Look at these scars, those tics, how the character moves slower than the rest. The mobster is limping through the dark alley. Watch out, they're dangerous. It teaches the audience to fear disabled bodies. Disability is used as a shortcut to signal danger. Let me be clear, disabled people are people, as complex and complicated as anyone else. They can be funny, arrogant, impulsive, timid, ambitious, moody, effervescent, hardworking, boring. They can have the most questionable hot takes and be unwilling to confront their own biases. You can absolutely have a disabled villain in your book, but as with any marginalized identity, if the villain is the only person in your story of that group, that choice puts you on a long list of authors who perpetuate the notion that there's something inherently bad about them. You can work around this by having multiple, multifaceted disabled characters. Readers will thank you, and it will make your story more interesting. When fleshing out a disabled character, ask yourself, why did I pick this disability in particular? Have I ensured that the manifestation, the consequences of the disability aren't just in service of a scene or a plot line? What are my own and what could be the audience's assumptions? Have I done adequate research to handle this part of the character's identity? Am I trying to say something about the character through their disability? Meaning, am I using it as a shortcut to convey personality? Not all disabilities are legible to an outsider based on limb differences, mobility aids, or canes. There are people out there who you can tell are walking around with ostomy bags. Invisible disabilities exist. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, chronic fatigue, MS, neurodivergence, hearing loss, autoimmune disorders, Crohn's disease, just to name a few. How has this impacted the character's experience of their disability? Do they have a static or a dynamic disability? Whether you're writing realistic fiction or a secondary world, what accommodations does that world offer? What technologies, aids, devices? Does your character have access to all of them? What are their limits? What challenges does their environment pose? What is their socioeconomic background? Do they have other marginalized identities? How does their background affect their access to medical care, to obtaining a diagnosis, if at all, and the support that they're getting? What is the comfort level with disability of the people around them? Family, friends, caregivers, teachers, colleagues, strangers, lovers. Do they know any other disabled people? How has this shaped their view of disability and their own comfort level with it? The disabled community is not a monolith. Two people can have the same diagnosis and lead entirely different lives. The more perspectives you observe, the more complex and the less ableism infected your characters will end up being. I invite you to read articles by disabled people, listen to podcasts by disabled people, follow disabled activists, advocates, seek out disabled book reviewers who may give you insights into portrayals of disabled characters they find well done or horrendous. Do not go up to people and ask for their medical history. Hire disabled sensitivity readers, especially when writing across marginalization, such as a Black deaf person or a trans wheelchair user. The intersection of these identities shape their experience of disability and can compound the stressors of navigating an ableist world. I have compiled a list of disability rights advocates and disabled creators who I recommend following. They come from a variety of backgrounds, have a variety of disabilities, and just speak very eloquently on the topic. And I will give you a second to take a screenshot, but also if you are on Instagram, I will put up this slide and tag everyone. If you are not on Instagram and cannot take a screenshot, you can follow me on another platform and I will give you the links in the DMs, so feel free to reach out. What I really want to stress is that I appreciate that you're taking the time to listen and learn how to be more inclusive in your writing. But inclusivity matters beyond the page. The insights you glean apply not just to fictional characters, but real people. Even if you aren't disabled yet, one day ableism might directly affect you too. The changes you make in your language, in your perception, in your attitude benefit everyone, not just 1 in 6. What you write, how you write has an impact. That's why you do it, right? Make use of that power. And remember, disability isn't a dirty word. Ableism is what leaves a stain. Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you to writehive for this opportunity. You can find me at Nicoletta Writes, NicolettaWrites on Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky. And I would love to connect with you, and I hope that this was helpful.